and welcome back to Identity Insights by Indicio. I'm your host, Tim Spring, and we have something a little bit different for you this week. We have a few team members attending Identity Week America, and we'll be bringing you live coverage of the day's events. So they just wrapped up today, and we have our VP of Business Development, James Schulte, with us. Thank you for joining me today, James. Would you mind starting us off with a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm James Schulte. I'm VP of Business Development here in Indicio. I just got here from Ann Arbor, Michigan, landed yesterday evening, and happy to be here in DC for the week here at Identity Week, and where I am manning the booth. So it's been exciting to meet all sorts of people from all over.
Awesome. So if you could, just in your own words, tell us, what is Identity Week? What's kind of happening at the conference?
Yeah, so this is an annual conference that happens here in DC, and I believe Terrapin Events operates this convention. They have a couple Identity Week meetings throughout the world. I think over in Amsterdam and London, and then this one obviously here in DC. It's an exhibition for vendors in the digital identity space, kind of the broader space, and that encompasses biometrics, AI, any sort of software that's emerging or traditional to handle digital identity. But it's a lot of big vendors, a lot of small vendors as well. They have a section for startups, mid-sized companies, and then obviously for the larger sponsors who have the really large exhibition stages. So there's great keynote speeches occurring. There are different series and panels that they have going on to address a number of topics in the space. But good place for organizations to come and procure services, software, hardware as well.
All right, very cool. Right, so you said most of your day was spent manning the booth. How was that? Were there any interesting conversations or people that you got to meet today?
Yeah, absolutely. So approached by a number of organizations from industries that I would say in the past year or two have started to gain more interest in verifiable credential technology and what our industry is up to. So particularly in the government sector, looking at things like visas, green cards, also in the enterprise access management for employees. That use case maybe not as new, but entities that we hadn't heard of in the past couple of years, looking into the verifiable credential stack, now digging into that a little bit more. So definitely some interesting unexpected conversations, which I'm personally really excited about.
All right. Were there any questions that really kind of stood out to you as being like, oh, that's an interesting new thing I hadn't thought of, or just a conversation you hadn't really had in the past?
I would say one of the big questions that I got from multiple organizations today was, when you're building out a verifiable credential ecosystem, how do you go about working with a market that has three different angles? From the issuing organizations, you have the holders or the end users, and then you have the verifying organizations. How do you seed the market to coordinate all of the different organizations in order to get an ecosystem stood up? And so that was a really good question. And we talked about how a lot of organizations start off where they are the issuer of a credential and also the verifier of a credential. So that's an easy way to bootstrap your own ecosystem to start using credentials right away. We talked about how that kind of grows and graduates into a more consortium style approach where within an ecosystem there might be organizations that already have existing relationships. It could be between a bank and an insurance company, for example, or between an airline and a government, for example, where credentials could be issued and shared. But it was great to hear that type of question. And I'd say another question that was asked was, regarding digital wallets. If credentials have to be held on a mobile device, or if there are other ways to do that, and especially in cases where end users don't have a mobile device, how is that handled? So talking through different options of custodial wallets held in the cloud, or even custodial wallets that could be accessed via a physical smart card, use cases like that coming into play. So yeah, all around great questions and good interest uh, from all sorts of organizations.
All right. So I know you also spoke today, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what your session was about and how that went for you?
Yeah, sure. So, a really cool thing about this conference is that they have a stage for the startups to do their, it's like a 5 minute startup pitch series where all the startups get the spotlight, get to go up and do a quick pitch about their business or their product. And so that was really cool. So did a basic introduction to Indicio and talked a little bit about the technology. Most of the audience there comes from the more traditional identity management space. So afterwards, there were a couple individuals that came up and had a lot more questions about it afterwards. But it was really interesting seeing which individuals in the crowd really perked up because they had maybe already heard a little bit about Indicio or about the projects that we've been involved in, and were interested in learning more after that pitch because they'd already heard of us. Um, or had seen some of the larger pilot projects going on around the world with this technology, and so to hear about that at this conference as well, they got excited. So yeah, really cool thing to participate in here at Identity Week.
All right, awesome. And I know you've already had a full day, so I just got one last question here for you.
It's been a
Is
fun day.
good. I'm glad to hear it. So were you able to get away from the booth at all and see anyone else's sessions or learn about any other interesting new uses for the technology?
I briefly got to walk around a little bit and had some good conversations. Um, yeah, there were some interesting ones. I think I had mentioned this last year, talking with you and what I had seen. But four-factor authentication was something that someone had been working on, which I personally, I don't know if I want. Two-factor authentication is already painful enough, and I think there's other ways to do it. Four-factor authentication is like oof. So but it was really, they seemed to have traction, and so awesome to see other approaches out there. There was a um, facial recognition booth that was talking about their technology that could recognize faces at 1 kilometer away, which
Wow.
being being in a digital identity space where we focus on privacy and preserving privacy, it makes me a little nervous, but really interesting to see how sharp some of the biometrics technologies are becoming. Had a conversation with an organization too that is working on temporary credentials where they're essentially creating the Snapchat of security credentials, not
Okay.
verifiable credentials, but uh, you know any generic um, credentials for authentication and for access, but they're using it specifically for government agents operating abroad. So every time they have an interaction with another agent or back with home base, I guess you could say, a new a new credential for that specific interaction or communication um, is created and then disappears. So every single message that is sent, there's a new credential or a new key that's created for that single interaction. So another interesting approach where in certain use cases could make total sense. So overall, some really interesting approaches. I guess one last one. There was a decentralized data management system that their decentralized approach was taking a selfie or a picture or any sort of biometric, but typically a picture of biometric, even a picture of a fingerprint, and would scramble it. They would essentially digitally rip up the photo or the digital representation, scatter it across a whole series of servers, or I can't remember what exactly, and then some sort of rescrambling would happen. But it was an actual, the picture was literally, well, not literally, digitally ripped up in order to decentralize the the representation. So another interesting approach, but really cool in general to see what people are up to.
Yeah, no, it sounds absolutely fascinating and a little terrifying in terms of the kilometer out facial recognition. Uh, but no, very cool. Awesome. Well, I do appreciate you making a few minutes to talk to us here, James. I know you've already had a long day, so let you go, but appreciate you sitting down. If you at home are interested in verifiable credential technology and would like to learn more, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to bring you updates and more educational content from the space whenever we can. If you have any questions or specific topics for us to cover, please go ahead and leave a comment below. We'll be sure to read and address them. Thank you again to you, James. If anyone's on the fence about maybe attending Identity Week next year, I was curious if you could leave us with just a few takeaways that you think, might encourage people to join next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Great conference to attend. I think before you attend, maybe consider what audience you're trying to reach or what's your goal in attending. I think as a vendor, it's a great place to explore and find potential partners, co-innovation partners, channel partners as well. A lot of independent consultants attending as well that could potentially be good to have a relationship to have as integrators or resellers, for example. Or if you're looking for customers, keep in mind it's probably a lot of government agencies that I've seen in attendance. A lot of some of the larger enterprises, looking for the latest and greatest. So yeah, maybe figure out what's your target audience there, and that'll probably help inform who you send and what you choose to do there. Because I think it's kind of a choose your own path depending on what type of booth you get, what type of speaking events you get involved in, and how you organize your day. So mostly just depends, but I think it's a great opportunity.